So in response to the recent incident in Nashville, President Biden came out and he is pushing for more gun control and also a national ban on so-called assault weapons. So let's talk about this. As I mentioned in the intro, in this video, I want to go over the recent speech that President Biden gave in response to the incident that occurred in Nashville. I usually don't make these types of videos and talk about these types of events because really I don't like giving attention to the criminals who perpetrate these atrocities. However, I think it's important to look at the response of the anti-gun side of President Biden and his administration and their push for more gun control based on these incidents. The speech that President Biden gave in response to this incident and his response for pushing for more gun control and a national ban on so-called assault weapons is just chock full with a bunch of horrible gun control talking points and pretty much just a bunch of falsehoods. So I wanted to address all these statements that he's made. So here is the video that we're going to be addressing here in this video.
These are weapons of war. I'm a Second Amendment guy. I have 2 shotguns. My sons have shotguns. But our states, everybody thinks somehow the Second Amendment is absolute. You're not allowed to go out and own an automatic weapon. You're not allowed to own a machine gun. You're not allowed to own a flamethrower. You're not allowed to own so many other things. Why in God's name do we allow these weapons of war on our streets and at our schools? According to law enforcement, the shooter in this horror had 2 assault weapons and a pistol. And what in God's name are we doing? These guns are this is hard to believe. I never thought when I started my public life that guns would be the #1 killer of children in America. Guns, #1. It's sick. And overwhelmingly a majority of gun owners agree. We have to do something. Not just everybody, the gun owners agree. There's a moral price to pay for inaction. Last year, we came together to pass the most significant gun safety legislation in 30 years. It was bipartisan. We got it done.
So first off, what you can see there in that video is that Biden starts off by saying, well, he owns shotguns, his sons own shotguns, therefore they are gun owners, and really, for whatever that's worth, I guess they claim that they support the Second Amendment. This is simply the common anti-gun tactic, one of them trying to lie, saying that they own firearms, that they're Second Amendment supporters, that they're gun owners, all that stuff. And really what they're trying to do also with talking about shotguns and rifles and all that is they're trying to frame the right to keep and bear arms as only a right related to hunting and your right to own and possess shotguns and hunting rifles. One of Biden's favorite statements, which I'm surprised he didn't include here in this speech, was that no one needs AR-15s because it's not like deer wear bulletproof vests. Again, this is all a tactic to try to tie the Second Amendment only to hunting and your right to own and possess firearms that are related to hunting. However, as we all know, and Biden himself knows, the Second Amendment is not restricted to only hunting. It is a person's right to defend their life and others' lives from attackers, and again, it's tied to self-defense. It also includes the right of the populace to be armed in case of confrontation, and that includes confrontation with a tyrannical force, both foreign and domestic. Even if Biden just glanced at the Heller decision and the Bruen decision, he would see that the courts have made it very clear that the right to keep and bear arms is an individual right that protects at its core the right to possess and carry firearms at your home and in public in case of confrontation. Justice Scalia in Heller clearly stated that the Second Amendment protects an individual right to possess a firearm connected with service in a militia and to use that arm for traditionally lawful purposes, such as self-defense within the home. Furthermore, Justice Scalia and Heller pointed out that individuals in possession of arms is very important because the framers believed that if you removed arms from individuals, there was the fear that without that, the federal government would then be able to take absolute control. However, an armed citizenry was a necessary check on the government itself. Justice Scalia actually stated in Heller, the anti-federalists feared that the federal government would disarm the people in order to disable the citizens' militia, enabling the politicized standing army or a select militia to rule. The response was to deny Congress power to abridge the ancient right of individuals to keep and bear arms, so that the ideal of citizens' militia would be preserved. So no, the Second Amendment is not tied only to owning shotguns and rifles, and it's not tied to only hunting. Biden knows the Second Amendment is a natural check against the authoritarianism which he is now pushing for, and that's what he doesn't like. He doesn't like individuals being in possession of arms. Next, he talks about how the Second Amendment is not absolute. We know the reality is that yes, the right is absolute. The plain text of the Second Amendment says, shall not be infringed. The type of restrictions that could ever even be contemplated are those that existed during the ratification of the Second Amendment. The Supreme Court has found that the government may be able to argue for a historical restriction that existed at the time of the ratification of the Second Amendment, but for modern restrictions and complete bans like Biden and his administration want, they have to point to some sort of historical analog. The Supreme Court in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin clearly stated that when the Second Amendment's plain text covers an individual's conduct, the Constitution presumptively protects that conduct. The government must then justify its regulation by demonstrating that it is consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearms regulation. Only then may a court conclude that the individual's conduct falls outside the Second Amendment's unqualified command. The unqualified command they are mentioning there in that quote is the text shall not be infringed. The next statements that Biden made is that you can't own automatic weapons, machine guns, or flamethrowers. And as we all know, any gun owner knows, that is a completely false statement. Under the NFA, you can still purchase and possess automatic weapons as long as you meet the statutory requirements, and as long as it's a weapon that was lawfully registered before May of 1986. I personally know quite a few people who legally own automatic firearms, who own machine guns, not here in the state of California, but in other states. I've been to events where there are machine guns and automatic weapons that are lawfully owned under the NFA. So again, those statements are completely false. And then the statements about flamethrowers, again, is completely false. There is no federal law that bans the purchase and possession of flamethrowers. Many people legally own them. I believe Maryland is the only state that has an outright ban on flamethrowers, but there is no federal law against it. And in almost every state, you can legally purchase and possess those items. Then Biden talked about how no one needs a weapon of war. Now, here again, he's just simply using a political buzzword that really has no actual definition. They like to classify any firearm that is black or looks like an AR-15 or looks like an AR or an AK as a weapon of war. In all reality, we know that a civilian AR-15 is not a military-grade weapon. But even if it were a weapon that is useful in military service, civilians under the Second Amendment have a right to own, possess, and use those types of arms. The militia was comprised of individuals who would come to service with common weapons that they possessed. Historically, there was no distinction between military-grade weapons and civilian-grade weapons. Also, sometimes you hear Biden say that people during the ratification of the Second Amendment or during the Revolutionary War, that people couldn't own cannons and dangerous items like that. The fact is that, yes, they could. People owned cannons. Even today, people can still legally own, purchase, possess, use cannons. Back during the Revolutionary War, there were private individuals who were in possession of cannons. There were complete warships that had cannons on them that were owned by private individuals and were hired during the Revolutionary War to help in the battle. So again, just a completely false statement that's being made by Biden and gets pushed out there all the time. Finally, Biden talks about how 2 so-called assault weapons were used during this incident. Now here's where I'm gonna have to talk a little bit about the incident. And really the truth is that no such thing as an assault weapon even exists. And even if you tried to put a legal definition on these items, something like the Kel-Tec Sub 2000, which was used during this incident, would not fall under that classical legal definition of a so-called assault weapon. Here, again, a Kel-Tec Sub 2000 is a pistol caliber carbine. It's either a 9mm or 40. There was also an AR pistol with a brace on it. And from the footage, it appears that the Kel-Tec Sub 2000 was primarily used during the incident. So it really kind of just shatters their narrative, but they still want to push that forward. So that's my response to the speech given by President Biden. Again, it was just full with a bunch of false statements. But let me know what you guys think down below. How would you respond? Maybe what are some arguments you have against this speech given by President Biden? So if you like this video and you like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm, and it signals to YouTube that you guys see value in these videos and in this type of two-way news. As always, I want to thank everybody who likes, comments, subscribes, who hits the notification bell, who shares these videos. You guys are directly impacting these videos, impacting this channel, and helping me to reach and educate more people than I could ever do on my own. So as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.